Okay.
Baruch Hashem, I had a very successful day in Tzvasa. Baruch Hashem.
Today is Kaf Daled Teves, Patashim Samech Tes, and we're on Amid Yud Aleph, Samech Tes.
It's
Yud Beis.
Amid Yud Beis.
Amid Yud Beis.
So we won't keep you long, but just Kaf Daled Teves, not to learn seems a little bit unsupportable. And in the wagon, hopefully there'll be a bit of Chazorah tomorrow, it'll make it at least more likely. But we saw the Mila, the Nekudas Tamtis. We saw that came to, first of all, Sogya, Bederach HaSogas Habina, Koyach Habina Sogya, Nechoina in the Imbat, nonetheless visited with Levush, we saw Prote and Levushe HaSoga, what they were means and different aspects that Bina uses in order to present it, as it were, the final Hasoga to the Bina, by ways of Masholium, indications and illustrations from other ideas that he may have already been masik. We saw that Nekudas HaTamtzis was like a shlila, a negation of all that, and arising into a new Nekuda, and I call it arising because it's like an upward move into a new gila of a Nekuda, intense Nekuda, in a way of an essence of the whole previous Asoga, which has in itself a tremendous light. It has a tremendous bahirus, as we saw in the previous class, which in a way is even more powerful to the Adam, who is misasik in the matter, in the Inyan. It's even more powerful to him than the original Oyer in the Nekuda of Chachma, even though that's come directly Milmaila Lamata. And this Nekuda has come Milmata Lamaila through the Aveda of the Adam himself, but Dafki, because it's come through all the Rubi HaProtim, and it's come through the Avodah V'Yagiya of the Adam, and he has to be Mamik Esatzmei. He has to go very deep in order to express it all in such an intense synoptical way. And therefore that means that he himself, through Yagiyosei, has been poished himself from those Levushim. He literally undressed his mind from those Levushim, and he deepened himself in the profundity by continuously drawing himself close to the matter. Trogan Zatsu, as we saw at the end of Omid Yudala, that he should come to know the very essence of the matter, and that's given the name Nekudas HaTamtzis. So now we go over to Omid Beis Harei Shezeh Bo Al Yedei Yigiyosei V'Hafshotosei. Now here we use a new word, not just Yigiyosei V'Avidosei, but we use the expression Yigiyosei V'Hafshotosei from the word lifshoit, as we saw earlier, and this is like a form of a noun based on the causatory form. Hafshotosei is a noun meaning his ability to be poishet. In other words, his ability to go out of the levushim into the essence of the matter. But he does that not just in the protein on it, but in a way of summing up and synopsizing the whole inyan. So that's a yigiyah. It's a very profound effort, and it's like, because it's taking off the levushim, it's a way of elevation as well. It's a way of going, and that's why the Rebbe used the expression mamik esatzmei. It's a union of profundity which digs, and we've seen here a couple of words which almost hint to the idea of das. The Rebbe said the union from mamik. It's well known mamik is shayat to das, and also he said trok he binds himself over to the matter, and also leida is etzem ha'inyan. In other words, that there's a certain trace that a koyach hadas here in that inyan of Nekudas Hatansis, which means the power of the Adam to makasher himself in the noise of the hasoga. And if you look in Perek Gimel in Tanya, right near the end, and that's what the activity or the pu'ula of das is defined over there. The Alter Rebbe says that it's Indian of iskashrus and hasmoda, continuously binding, continuously moving yourself into the matter and seeing its reference to all aspects of your personal life. That's similar here, but in a more slightly abstract way to what happens in reaching this Nekudas Hatansis. So he says that Yegiya and that ability to literally abstractize himself and go into the essential abstractity of the matter. However, I hesitate to use the word abstractness, because abstract in English tends to imply a certain, havdalah from the real implication of things. He's a rather abstract person, meaning he's a bit sort of withdrawn, not in the reality. And here the abstractity really leads him to the amitius amusa. It really brings him to the emusa noise of the inyan, be'emes lamite. And we could say that if you asked a person like that anything about that particular idea and that particular musag, then he would be able to tell you all the details, even the simple ones, even the inyanim which are more shaykh lapoyo. And so therefore, said the Rebbe, that inyan of Yekiya, of Afshota, that comes through effort, but at the same time elevational effort of going away from the masholim and all the other things that helped you. And then he puts in brackets, Shehu inyan bitl hakeli or kelim vi hayeshus. Now we've already had this previously in the sentences previously, but here it tends to have a slightly different implication. Shehu inyan bitl hakelim vi hayeshus. Before we saw more the emphasis was on bitl hayeshus. And here we say bitl hakelim. Now what's the implication of bitl hakelim? We see that when you come into bina, then bina is the beginning of kelim, as is well known. And kelim are limiting entities, and they are also entities through which you, like when you use a keli, the keli assists you to carry out a certain malacha. So these kelim assist you to go into further details of appreciation of the union. So therefore the kelim on the one hand lead you in a helpful direction, on the other hand they limit things. So bitl hakeli means that you go into a form of hasoga where you're no longer limited so much, and you don't need the limitations of the indications of the kelim, because you've already gone beyond that somewhat. And there were a bitl of a kli, a bitl kelim always implies a much profounder breadth in the keli, but it means that if he does reach kelim now, they're going to be much more edel and much more less limiting and less defined than they were before, but they're going to be like a form of rungs on a ladder into a much higher inyan. And therefore bitl akli is always a kli in its own right, but a kli to a much more higher and elevated view of the inyan. And it's like we see by a mensch, when he's mavatal, he's kelim, then that doesn't mean cholila, like in infantoyu, that you don't want any kelim. No, it means that you elevated, and to use the expression in Yiddish, oisgeedelt, you've made edel your keli, and therefore it's able to be makabel, a deeper and better oil. And that's why I would suggest it's connected with the word hafshota. Yegiya we've already had, and that's b'derech klal bitl hayeshes and bitl of that. Over here we see that the hafshota, or that ability of going up and beyond in the etzim grasp of the matter, the etzim noisei, that's already bitl hakelim. That's only how the kelim themselves have become edler, and they've broadened their whole span, that they're able to be a vessel to much higher and edler inyan. So therefore, That's a connection to the two phrases. Yosef Afshatosa and Bittul Ayeshes, Bittul HaKelim V'Ayes. So if it's Bittul HaKelim, then it's automatically Bittul HaYeshes, because that means he's gone into a higher level. Bahanakuda Hatamtzis, B'Emes, said the Rebbe, Meye B'Zeh Gili Oil Rav, Har B'Yeseh Me Soga HaKodem. Because he only began making this whole Nakudas Hatamtzis when he'd already fully understood it. You can't really hope to get to a Nakudas Hatamtzis if you haven't really gone into the full Hasoga yet. So Hasoga Kodemus means that he was already Masik. He completed the Hasoga. He had the Hasoga. Now the Nakudas Hatamtzis is going back into the synoptical definition. In that, says the Rebbe, is Meir a Rav, or Oyer Rav, Har B'Yeseh, than the Hasoga. Because every Inyan in Seichel, which reveals itself to a man, has got light. It has a Oyer and a Chayas, which lights up his whole self. In Chokhmah, it's in one way. In Bina, it's like the satisfaction and the Nachas Ruach that a man has when he really gets things, and he really understands things. And that's a lichtigkeit. It's an illustration and how to call it, illumination in his life. But the type of light in the Nakudas Hatamtzis is an atzmistical light. You've taken the whole inner, and you're looking now for the etzem brevity of the essential noise of the matter. So the light that's in that is already a much deeper, more profound, how would you call it, a more intense, aimed sort of a light than it is in the more detailed facets in the Hasoga HaKodemes. So if that's the case, if the Oyer here is a Oyer Rav, and it's got in itself a much deeper quality and elevation than the light of Hasoga, then I might have thought that this is a completely different level, which has gone beyond the Hasoga, and since it's gone beyond the Hasoga, it's another state, all on its own. So I might say that this is no longer the Avodah Mitzad Hasoga and Mitzad Tam V'Das, but this is only a Inyan L'mailami Tam V'das altogether. Maybe it's getting close to Bittul Hamiti and not Bittul Ha. So therefore, he corrects that by saying, Avo ha'oyer hazeh, emes, it's a oyer rav, meaning a very intense, deeply aimed oyer compared to the oyer of the Hasoga. However, oyer hazeh, harihu bo me Hasoga. You haven't got out of where you began. Emes, you went into a much higher experience of the Hasoga, but you didn't get away from the Hasoga. Ve'ein zeh ma shemeir lo bo inyan eze gilui shel ha'mayla me Hasoga. Ki ima shebo alitei Hasoga. It's all come through the medium of a Hasoga. So emes, it's got in itself an intensity and a behirus more than the oil of the actual busyness with the Hasoga. Emes. But he said, sof kosof, what is it? It's a higher light in Hasoga Gufa. It's come through the inner of the Hasoga. So therefore we can't define it as a whole new form of bittul. It's a higher and more edel bittul, but sof kosof, it's in the same, what you might call definitional bracket as the bittul of Hasoga. And that's what he said. It came alit Hasoga. V'hu gam kein, in brackets, rak b'bchinas yedias matzias, loy b'bchinas ama. In other words, earlier we had another svara and another aspect to our whole understanding, that why all these inyonim of Hasoga and all the rest of it connected with Bittul Hayesh and not Bittul Amiti, emes of Bittul, where his whole being, his whole mahus becomes Batel, because it's based on all these inyonim are busy with Yediyas Hama Siyas, not Yediyas Hamahus. We only know about Elikus, we know about Inyonim, but we're not that we've gone into the very essence of Elikus. Yet ever the Bittul, and we saw that those two Inyonim are linked together, that why in general is it right to say that this is only a Bittul HaMatzias, because you're only dealing a Bittul Hayesh, because we're dealing B'Klal with Inyonim which are only Matzias. We don't really know anything essential or Mahusi about Elikus. However, the Bittul that can be expected from that is only a basically Chitzenius Dika Bittul, because it's only just knowing about Elikus, not knowing Elikus B'Yetzeh. So therefore, said the Rebbe, your Nakudas Atamtis, with all its miles, came through the Inyan von Hasoga, and therefore, Sofkosov, it's in the same general bracket, it did Matthias, but not a Inyan von Essence or Mahus, Volochain, but Nakudas Atamtis, Agam Shehi Mufshetes. It's been undone or undressed from the Proteha Soger, Mikol Mokim Nirgoshim Bo Gam Proteha Soger, Rak Shahein Beprinas Hafshota Gamke. So he said that a man who hears the Nakudas Atamtis, he will be impressed by the tremendous intensity of it. But if he knows the whole Hasoga, just like the guy who said the Nakudas Atamtis, then he will hear in that Nakudas Atamtis the details. In other words, you don't go completely beyond the details. He will know what sort of details are expressed and how they could summed up in that very profound synopsis. And the man himself who's been born on Nakudas Atamtis, and he's expressed the Nakudas Atamtis, he for sure sees in it the details which he's summing up. Which means it's not a klal mufshat legamri miha pratim. It's a klal which you can still see and feel in it all the pratim that you were shoyler in order to get to that klal. Ulazais, am ba'avoida b'chinas o madrege zu, agam shehu yesa b'chinas devekes va'achtos, mikemoi ba'avoida hanal, shalidei hasoga v'izbonenes, mikol mokem, הרי זה גם כן רק ביטל היש לבד, דהיינו רק ביטל ישוסוי, ולא בבחינת אמיתיס איסאחתס. In other words, the Rebbe, it's an Indian of bittul of the yeshes not becoming one mamish for telekus. When there's a bittul of the mahus, then come to us that you have been absorbed into Elikus. It means your mahus has become completely negated and cancelled the gabi the Eliki which is mayor on you. Obviously, that you've only been mevatel yeshes, then you're not really one thing with Elikus. You're just more, as it were, warm, more informed, and more, as it were, elevated and stirred by Elikus. So in that regard, you're in a state of union with it. Isachtas. Of it's not Isachtas Amiti is that you and Elikus are becoming one in it. And therefore he said, Gamba Mazik Adregezu, Aiku Ataim Chins Bitul Yeshusai. The Ikis you be Mavatal his Yeshes. I want not these whole beings become absorbed and bottled into the earth. Shekol Zman, or Kol Zeh, he said, Mashipo, Mi Koyach Atzmei V'yeh. He said, all this comes, Mi Koyach V'yeh. No. We saw before, that's on the one hand, when it gets to the Madrege, it's a chison, as it were. It's not a full reaching of Achtes Pelikus. It's not a full reaching of Bittul, your whole Metzia, your whole being into Elikus. Of a Mitzad Hasheni, the fact that comes Mitzad your Yegiya, or that's got a certain qualitative value to it, that maybe as we go along we'll see more about that. It is an old cloud that something that comes through your effort has in itself a maila. And therefore we find an amazing incident that the Eibishter wanted a deer of a Tartanium. And sprung out the claim, well, if the Eibishter wants a deer of a Tartanium, no problem, he can make it. There's absolutely no, as far as he's concerned, he can make a Tartanium and then he can come and dwell there. Now the whole Indian is he wants that the man should make the deer of a Tartanium. The Olam should make it. What's for a deer of a Tartanium can a order make? What is he really able to do? No, okay, we're going to see Bittul Amiti of his own Mahus is only going to come a mile. That's what we're about to learn. It's only going to come a mile. So the mensch makes a deer of a Tartanium. What after all did he do? Ma was that? So Bittul Yedias Amatis Bilbat. Like having a meaty Selikus, that's almost what you might call small fry. That's Adikus a small chain. Anyway, was it in Nakuda? The Nakuda is that comes bekoyach atzmai. But that comes al yidei koyach atzmai from the mensch. He's with all its drawbacks. That's exactly what Teves wants. And that's the great secret of Lubavitch. That's a great Indian of the Alter Rebbe, Koft Teves, that the Alter Rebbe introduced the most amazing and elevating system that's probably ever been introduced. The most amazing insight into the human psyche and into the makeup of the whole nefesh of the Adam and all the inyanim. Of a so-called says the Alter Rebbe, I did all that in order to shockle you. What I want with all that, with the ganze Tanya, with the ganze Inyanim, with the ganze Likutei Torah, with the all Inyanim, I wanted you should do something. But the man should do something. Was it schwer? Ein noch anami, oh, but it was schwer. It's something the man does bekoyach atzmai, David says, that's why I'm prepared to come in 12. That's why I'm prepared. And that's the difference between Emerson, Chassidic Chabad, and other Chassidim. Not that God, we mean anything against the other Chassidim are wonderful people and they're very elevated people you can learn from them. Oh, but that's the one Indian in Lubavitch that everything ultimately has to be done through your effort. And with the Rebbe answers in a place, I'm going to let you go now, the Rebbe answers in a place that the whole Indian of the Meraglim is one of the most puzzling things in the church. I mean, this whole mistake on the part of the Meraglim, the whole Indian, they were big people, they were sent in a way that they were Koil Nasi Bahem, they were Nasiim of the tribes. Nonetheless, they made this tremendous sort of a blunder. So how come, right at the beginning, Rashi says, Shlach Lecho, and he says, in the name of Hashem, L'daitcho. This is your idea. You're going to reach the idea that you're going to send the Meraglim. Ani eini mitzvah. I'm not really telling you to do it. And then about a line later, Rashi says, Hareini noisen lechem mokim litois. I'm giving you even a place to make a mistake. That's all written in Rashi. Take a look. You'll see. So the Rebbe comes along in Toshin Anal, the very amazing Sikh Mamish, mind-boggling. From the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says to Moshe, I'm not telling you, but nonetheless go ahead. It's not my mitzvah, nonetheless do it. And I'm leaving a place for you to make a blunder. No, which does. You go in there, so blow the goyim apart and make a clean shetter, and then bring your yidden in. Which is different say? Ella, so the whole reason why it was left up to you is the sword of avodah v'koyach atzmai. That's for some reason what they used to want. And therefore he said to Moshe Rabbeinu, this is your deal. This is kilu one in the Torah. It's not a mitzvah. It's you got to do it yourself, and that will be the opening to all the other inyanim which I'm going to demand of you. And they have to also be early day atzmai. Given that Eretz Yisrael and the Knesset are such a Indian atzmi in the whole Yiddishkeit, then it's got to come early day koyach atzmai. And if you look in Samavov, after a certain point in Samavov, the Rebbe Rashab says that his whole purpose in all these drushim is to explain why you have to have avodah koyach. Why is that so dear, Lamaila? And nobody ever quite knows exactly where is the term. It's so immense. In other words, you've got to learn the whole Samavov to get some idea why the whole Indian of koyach atzmai is so important. Now, that's what the Rebbe hints here. Emes a bittel, a meat is a bittel amahus comes from Maila. But this is what we just described. That's Yosef, Avshatosef, and the mensch himself. That's the ultimate tachlis. That's the ultimate tachlis, and that's the ultimate message of Chassidus Chabad. So we have to find, as we go along, we have to find a way that even with those limitations, maybe we can also find a bittul amiti somewhere between the lines. And Omen Keni Rotzen, Teves Miyad, we should see the effort, the result of all the efforts of the Yidden in the Golas, the Koyach Atzmon, the Binyan Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, Teves Miyad Mamish. Good. Okay. So that gives you a bit of food for thought for